Wuthering Waves lets you do some pretty cool stuff in combat. Parries, dodges, and the Concerto energy system all add a tremendous layer of complexity and finesse to battles. The intro and outro skill system heavily encourages the interplay of all these mechanics, providing access to incredible damage boosting buffs or a highly damaging abilities through outro skills, while intro skills provide significant resource gain through a character's forte bar or other means. With echo skills and their incredibly powerful on-field effects thrown into the equation as well, players have a varied arsenal of mechanics at their disposal to master across their gameplay. But what if there was a strategy that threw half these mechanics out the window, while increasing your team's DPS? Today I'll be discussing a very particular playstyle that's been growing in popularity, specifically with the release of Yinlin and the upcoming release of Jinhsi. That style or mechanic is called Quickswap. Before I dive into this mechanic, I want to talk about something that can cause problems: high ping. Ping spikes suck, especially in a game like Wuthering Waves. Sometimes I'll spike to over 200, which can lead to some disastrous outcomes. If any of you are having connection issues like me, GearUP is here to solve your problems. With their innovative routing software, you can keep that ping super consistent and even below 100 milliseconds with no packet loss. I was able to activate my account and my 3-day trial in less than 5 minutes, and with a single click, Wuthering Waves was good to go. GearUP automates everything while getting me the lowest latency possible. If I'm looking to play in other regions like Southeast Asia, all it takes is a single click. There's even a customer service team ready to help with my problems within 12 hours. There are also famous creators like Jello Impact using it as well, so don't worry about any bans. Let me know how consistent your ping is after using GearUP. With how important timing is for this mechanic to function, I'll be using GearUP to get the best results. With that, Quickswap exists because of one single mechanic: invulnerability while swapping. An on-fielded character in Wuthering Waves, when using certain moves in their kit, will continue performing that action while gaining invulnerability if swapped to another character. This is what many call a swap cancel. The main draw of this mechanic is the ability to completely negate a high damage attack with that invulnerability, or even parry the attack if the swapped-in character uses an intro skill, while the new on-fielded character does damage at the same time. While there are some character abilities that don't persist through a swap, many abilities and echo skills do, allowing for certain team comps to on-field multiple units at a time. Quickswapping allows for typically dangerous moves like Calcharo's Death Messenger to hit without taking any damage at all, which can be incredibly useful in scenarios like hologram bosses or the Tower of Adversity. Characters like Yinlin are especially suited to this playstyle due to their low cooldown on things like the Resonance skill and long, vulnerable animations across their kit, like her Forte bar. This allows for teams to deal damage in situations or boss phases that they normally wouldn't, and can dramatically increase their survivability and damage potential of characters. Other notable Quickswap characters include Encore and Havoc Rover. Encore provides some of the highest damage on the roster, but at the cost of long animations, especially on her skill and Forte bar. Swap canceling off either of these abilities allows her to output respectable damage without the risk or dodge cancels you'd normally perform while fully on-fielding her. Havoc Rover, on the other hand, has a lot of burst damage. Utilizing their Resonance skill and its enhanced reset upon activating a Forte bar can inflict a lot of damage in a short amount of time. Quickswap works fantastically with this playstyle due to their long animations on some of these abilities. In both of these characters' kits, Quickswap effectively nullifies many of their weaknesses and enhances their strengths. It's almost unimaginable to think of using Encore's Forte bar in combat without swap canceling off. Looking at all of Quickswap's benefits in a vacuum might draw people to a simple conclusion: it's the best way to play the game. Unfortunately, Quickswap has some problems, namely due to its execution and its interaction with specific battle mechanics. When it comes to execution, Quickswap has an arguably steep learning curve. To make an analogy, learning the combat mechanics in Wuthering Waves is like learning to drive a car. The baseline mechanics aren't too complicated, like how steering or braking isn't difficult, but the act of putting it all together can be a challenge for some. Learning Quickswap while also figuring out the combat mechanics of Wuthering Waves is like turning that car into a stick shift. There's a lot more steps to get to the end result of either moving the car or dealing damage to the enemy. Furthermore, with Quickswap, it's a lot easier to make costly mistakes. Swapping at the wrong time and getting hit, swapping onto the wrong character, or accidentally using an intro skill are all very easy things to do when you're placing additional and sometimes complicated inputs into a fast-paced game like Wuthering Waves. The second issue with Quickswap is its tendency to conflict with many outro skills that involve buffs. Outside of Verena and Baizhi, virtually every buffing outro skill only affects the switched-in resonator for 14 seconds, or when the character leaves the field. When the playstyle relies on constantly switching this on-fielded character to utilize the invulnerability mechanic and increase DPS, these outro buffs end up having an incredibly short uptime. Sonata sets like Moonlit Clouds, one of the most powerful sub-DPS sets in the game, also has their uptime impacted on these Quickswap teams, which makes an elemental damage set oftentimes more effective on those sub-DPS characters when utilized in these Quickswap lineups. This means that characters like Verena or Baizhi, with their universal long-lasting buffs while equipped with the rejuvenating glow Sonata sets, are some of the strongest additions you can make to a Quickswap team. You'd preferably pair either of these two with two strong DPS characters. Players effectively have to make the trade-off of buff uptime for that constant swapping. This makes DPS characters that don't actually have a buffing outro skill sometimes more desirable to play within these Quickswap teams. A combination of Havoc Rover and Encore can feel better to play than Calcharo and Yinlin, simply due to the fact that you can get full value out of the prior's outro skills, while in the former, Yinlin's buffs are oftentimes cut short. However, all three of Calcharo, Havoc Rover, and Encore have shortened uptime on their burst modes when played in Quickswap, as they won't actually be on field for all of it like in their hypercarry teams. Quickswapping can also have some negative interactions with other game mechanics, specifically the Concerto energy system. Mechanics like parrying and perfect dodging will generate a significant amount of Concerto energy, which is mandatory to even trigger outro skills in the first place. Quickswapping in many instances can completely avoid an attack without giving the opportunity to parry or dodge. That guaranteed attack and invulnerability during a swap can unfortunately reduce the amount of Concerto energy your characters gain, potentially slowing down your rotations. However, Quickswapping isn't a band-aid solution to every attack, and dodges at minimum will still have to be used to survive most fights. Overall, Quickswap is one of the most, if not the most fast-paced playstyle in a fast-paced game. It undoubtedly improves the damage capability and survivability of many characters, but can't diminish the value of some of the game's most powerful buffs. Traditional hypercarry teams, like a team of Jian, Mortefi, and Verena, are undoubtedly much easier to play, with predictable rotations and most of the on-field time spent on a single character. This means that a player mainly needs to get comfortable with only one character's moveset and parry windows. Quickswap, on the other hand, requires the player to understand nearly all of their team's movesets and fully leverage the abilities that can be swap cancelled for that invulnerability window. If you're a player still adapting to the combat of Wuthering Waves, I highly recommend you save the Quickswap playstyle for when you're a bit more comfortable with the game's mechanics and have more knowledge of character kits. Many of the DPS characters traditionally used in Quickswap teams have a hypercarry alternative that's going to be a lot easier to learn and play, with simple team rotations that fully leverage outro skill buffs to increase damage rather than additional inputs. Hopefully, this overview was helpful in highlighting the nuances of a Quickswap playstyle. It's undoubtedly an incredible way to increase team damage and avoid enemy damage, but it does come with some significant drawbacks. Personally, I found it pretty hard to pick up. As the years go by, my hands are getting slower and slower, and with more inputs, there are more opportunities to make mistakes. I prefer leaning towards playstyles and rotations that fully utilize outro skill buffs, but I'll definitely be looking into many more of these teams and compositions into the future as new characters release. Till then, peace out.